Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
The night my wife told me to go sleep in your storage unit, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because at 54 years old, standing in my older brother's glass-walled dining room in Santa Barbara, watching him pour 18-year scotch into imported crystal, I realized something cold and permanent. I had spent my entire adult life being reliable, and somehow, I had become replaceable. Ethan stood at the head of the reclaimed oak table, charming a pair of venture partners from San Francisco. He laughed easily, spoke confidently about projected returns, gestured toward the ocean view as if he personally owned the Pacific. Daniel wouldn't get the growth model, he said lightly when one of them asked about me. He's more operations, compliance, risk control. Polite laughter followed. My wife, Claire, didn't defend me. She swirled her wine and added, "Well, at least one of the Hayes brothers knows how to scale." That was the fracture. 6 weeks earlier, our father, Thomas Hayes, had died quickly from pancreatic cancer. He'd been a machinist in Oxnard for 40 years, a quiet man who distrusted banks and loved tangible assets. He believed in land, steel, and contracts that couldn't be manipulated by charisma. When the will was read, Ethan received the oceanfront house in Santa Barbara, purchased decades before coastal prices exploded. I inherited a 16,000 square foot industrial storage facility near the freight corridor outside Ventura. Ethan leaned back in the probate attorney's leather chair and said, "Dad knew you prefer solid things, Dan. Concrete, structure." He made it sound generous. The facility had peeling paint, cracked asphalt, and a corrugated steel roof. His house had panoramic sunsets. That dinner party was supposed to celebrate legacy. Ethan had refinanced the beach house, installed frameless glass railings, and hired a branding consultant for his new venture fund. Claire admired that about him. Ambition packaged as inevitability. When an investor asked about the industrial parcel mentioned in probate filings, Ethan smirked. "Oh, that old thing? Scrap property. Daniel took it. He loves warehouses." More laughter. Claire added softly, "He'll probably turn it into spreadsheets." I felt the heat climb my neck, but said nothing. I had testified before compliance boards in Texas and negotiated supply chain audits in Detroit winters. I knew how to sit still while someone underestimated me. But humiliation inside your marriage burns differently. After the guests left, the house fell quiet. Ocean wind pressed against the glass. "You didn't say much tonight," Claire said. "I wasn't asked much." She sighed. "Ethan's building momentum. You could at least act supportive. I've paid taxes on that facility for years while he leveraged the house twice. That's different." "How?" "Because Ethan has vision." There it was, the word that had quietly outranked me for 15 years. "And what do I have?" I asked. She hesitated. "Stability." "But stability doesn't grow," she added. The disappointment in her voice wasn't sharp anymore. It was settled. "You're 54, Daniel," she said finally. "And your biggest asset is a condemned storage unit. I kept us debt-free. You kept us small." Silence. Then she walked to the door, opened it, and said calmly, "If that building matters so much, go stay there tonight." No yelling, no slammed doors, just the clean click of a lock. I drove 40 minutes north in silence. When I unlocked the gate to the industrial property, the metal chain clanged against the post, like something hollow. Inside, it smelled of salt air and old oil. No ocean view, no investors, just steel beams and quiet. I closed the rolling door and let the echo settle. For the first time that night, my breathing slowed. Then I noticed it. A thick envelope taped inside the breaker panel. Property tax notice, stamped 2 days earlier. And beneath the zoning classification, in bold municipal type, industrial multi-use. Subsurface easement, active subsurface easement. I stood there longer than necessary. Ethan had handled most estate communications. Why hadn't he mentioned that? I folded the notice and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I slept on a tarp that night, staring at steel trusses overhead, one thought circling steadily. Ethan never once visited this place in 5 years. He saw rust. I saw documentation. In the morning, I reopened the panel. One breaker label caught my eye. Zone D, port feed. There was a small red dot next to it. I pressed my hand against the casing. Warm. At 6 a.m., in a supposedly inactive building. I pulled county records on my phone. The 1999 deed amendment surfaced after a long loading delay. Right-of-way, granted to Coastal Secure Infrastructure Group for fiber routing and hardened conduit access. Fiber, secure conduit, not storage, not scrap, infrastructure. I called the utility number listed. After navigating automated menus, a representative confirmed something that steadied my pulse. That parcel is connected through a private industrial substation tied to Port Authority infrastructure. Is it active? Yes, sir. Continuous load. Continuous. 24-hour draw. Not lighting. Not refrigeration. Data doesn't lie. Around noon, Ethan showed up in linen and sunglasses. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Reviewing the deed attachments." He tossed a utility delinquency notice at me. "Transfer the account. I'm closing on this property in 3 weeks. Mixed-use developer. They'll clear it." "Did you disclose subsurface rights?" I asked. He blinked. "What rights?" "Easement. Federal routing conduit." He scoffed. "It's junk pipe under dirt." I walked to the breaker panel and placed his hand against it. He pulled it back. "It's warm." "Nothing in here is running." His jaw tightened. "You always complicate simple things." "No," I said quietly. "I clarify them." After he left, I searched deeper. Coastal Secure Infrastructure wasn't a utility vendor. It was a federal subcontractor, providing hardened fiber redundancies along the West Coast. Secure communications backbone, beneath my concrete floor. I found the access plate near the west wall. Square steel, flush with the ground. Bolts recessed and painted over. Stamped faintly. Authorized personnel only. I called our father's estate attorney. There was a long pause when I mentioned the easement. "Yes," she said carefully. "Your father structured annual lease compensation tied to that conduit. Payments were routed to the estate trust pending final asset distribution." "How much?" I asked. 5 years ago, approximately $190,000 annually. It escalates." I stared at the steel plate. "And if the land is sold?" "The subsurface lease must be disclosed or bought out. Federal contracts don't vanish." "Estimated buyout value?" "Between 2 and 3 million." The shift inside me wasn't excitement. It was alignment. Ethan thought he was selling scrap property for $500,000. He was standing on top of infrastructure worth 5 times that. And he had threatened to disconnect it. Blind men move fast. Auditors wait. For 30 years, I had been the quiet one, the stabilizer, the risk assessor. Ethan built image. I read attachments. Claire chased momentum. I traced clauses. Now the clause was beneath my feet. Dad hadn't left me a storage unit. He had left me leverage. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the disposable one. I was the only one who understood what we actually owned.